everyone. Thanks for joining us here at Book Blather. If you're new here, I'm Dave. This is Olive. And today's video is, we're behind again, of course, we've got to catch up on videos. But today is one that we should have done a couple weeks ago. And this video is completely the result of our good friend Gareth over at Book Songs and Other Magic. So if you've been around, you know that we do a live show every other Thursday evening called Is This Thing On? We've been doing this together for well over a year, a year and a half now, right? And, you know, a couple weeks ago, we were coming up on episode 42. And that number is a very significant number in the book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So we had never read the book, but Gareth wanted to sort of devote that episode or some of that episode to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So we said fine, right? And we hurried up and read the book that we had never read before and should have long ago. And so we read the book and also watched the movie. And of course, Gareth also did a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy tag. So that's what today is about. It's about everything Hitchhiker. So we are probably the last ones on the planet not to have read this book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams, published in 1979. So this is part of a bigger thing. It's not just this book. This book actually has, I think Adams wrote, 5 books in the series, and there's a 6th one now that was written by somebody else, I think after he passed away. But there is, it actually started as a radio program, and there's been a TV show and a movie. So there's been a number of things basically around this Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But this book was published in 1979, and this is probably most people know what this is about. But if you don't, if we were only the second to last person on the planet not to have read it, basically what this is, this is just a silly sci-fi book. I don't know if you'd call it like absurdist fiction, probably, like maybe like absurdist science fiction, or I don't know if it would fall in that category, because it's absurd. It's just ridiculous. So, but it's funny. So basically it follows our main guy, Arthur Dent, who's he's just trying to live life, and he wakes up one morning and he finds out he wakes up one morning to like these bulldozers outside his house, and they're going to bulldoze down his house because they want to put in like a highway there, and the house is in the way. And he didn't know anything about it, and this is the start of the ridiculousness. And so as he's trying to, he lays down in front of this bulldozer to try to get it to stop, and his friend, Ford Prefect, comes and gets him to go away and said, no, this doesn't matter, and takes him off to the bar, right? And he lets him know basically that it doesn't really matter, because in I forget, 10 minutes or something, actually the entire planet is going to get bulldozed because the much higher alien intelligences that be need to put a interstellar freeway through where Earth is. And so these aliens, aliens called the Vogons, are coming to destroy the Earth. And so he's saying, don't worry about it, because the Earth's about to end. Incidentally, you find out we are only the 3rd smartest species on the planet. But that's a whole nother thing. And so the two of them I won't give away the whole thing, but the two of them end up getting coincidentally rescued or accidentally rescued by this ship, which is captained by, turns out, Ford's cousin. What's Zaphod Beeblebrox, I think what's the name, and he's actually the president of the galaxy, but he's also just stole this super spaceship, right? That with runs on an improbability drive, so it like a appears like everywhere instantaneously. It's like a multiverse sort of thing, and all these different improbable things happen. So like weird stuff happens. One of which was this total coincidental rescue of Ford Prefect and Arthur. And so it turns out he also, there was another human on the ship that Zaphod Beeblebrox had picked up, that Arthur already had met like at a bar one night, and just she happened to coincidentally be picked up by Zaphod before. So there's two of them on the ship before the Earth, when the Earth got destroyed. And so they go on these adventures. They got this crazy, the Zaphod's on the run, even though he's the president of the galaxy, and he's trying to hunt down this other planet that's important. And I don't want to give any more of that away, but so they go on these adventures, and there's also like this super depressed robot on the spaceship who is also very comical. He's like just like constantly depressed, this guy, and it's just really weird. It's just like tons of weird, absurd stuff happens. And totally, none of it's at all meant to be believable. It's meant to be absurd and funny, which it is. We're definitely gonna keep going on with the series. We just happen to have a couple of these that we picked them up over the years, because we constantly go into book fairs and can't not pick stuff up. So we already have the next one, which is The Restaurant at the End of the Universe, which we'll probably read before too long, because this was a very quick read. It went very fast. It's easy read. It's fun. In the spirit of reading this in advance of the show that Gareth wanted to do, we also, as soon as we finished reading the book, we then watched the movie. So there was a movie that came out in 2005 called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That was, very much based on this book. There was a previous TV series in the 80s, which we have not watched, but we've been advised that we should watch it. But we did watch this movie in 2005, and the movie was same thing. It was absurd. My take when I watched the movie, because I had just read the book, is I thought the first half of the movie very closely followed the book. And then the second half of the movie, they kind of veered away from it in some respects. They added some other things, which were funny as well. They were cool. They didn't detract from it. But some of the things, the way they, visualized it in the movie was kind of not what I had thought while reading the book. You know what I mean? It was a little bit different. It was a little bit different than my reading of the story, but anyway, the movie largely followed the book, and that was also fun, and it was also, I recommend watching it if you like that sort of thing. It was pretty good. So that's the book, and I don't want to tell you any more of the story in case you haven't read it yet. I don't want to ruin it because it's not that long a book, so I don't want to ruin any more specifics of the adventures. But Gareth also did, because he was very excited about this, he also did a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy tag, because it looked like nobody had ever done one before. So that is what we're going to do now, and we'll tell you just a little bit more as we go through some of these prompts. You see, we'll discuss the book a little bit more. But so the first prompt is demolishing your house. What book would you look for first to save from the demolition? So this, because Arthur Dent's, that's how the movie starts, was his house was getting demolished, and then his planet was getting demolished. So the book that I would say first is a book I've showed many times. It is far from the most valuable book that we have. I mean, we have books that are worth, plenty of books that are worth much more than this, but this has incredible sentimental value to us. And this is Dragons of Autumn Twilight by Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman. I should have pulled down the better... Oh, I don't have it anymore. I gave it to somebody. I had a better copy where you could actually see what it looked like. So I'll try to put it up close there. But so this was an early book by TSR. The people that did Dungeons and Dragons before they were basically taken over by Wizards of the Coast. But this was a popular TSR book back then. This is the first in a trilogy, and which kicked off a massive... I think there's over 100 Dragonlance books now, published by many different authors. Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman did do a bunch, a few different trilogies and some ancillary stuff, but a bunch of other authors came in and wrote stories around the world of Kryn. It's a very, very, very rich fantasy world. And so this book, as you can see, it's in horrible condition because this book is super, super important to me sentimentally because I have had this book since I was 13, I think, 12 or 13. I'm pretty sure 13. And I was in 8th grade, I think, when I picked this up. And so, and it was, I think probably the first like full length novel that like really, like kind of got me into wanting to read, that I really enjoyed. And so I've read it numerous times. I'm going to be reading it again soon because my plan is to start a Dragonlance project, like a long-term Dragonlance project where we read, I don't know, about a book a month, but maybe a book every other month, something like that. So that will be coming in the, maybe in a few months from now. So if you're interested in that, let us know because anyway, so yeah, so this book obviously has very sentimental value to me, so a lot of sentimental value to me. So that's the one that I would say first. Okay, Vogon Poetry. So the Vogons, the aliens that were coming to destroy the Earth, one of the greatest tortures that you could ever experience in the universe would be listening to Vogon poetry because it was so horrible. That's the kind of absurdity that this thing was. That would be just one of the greatest tortures that you could experience was listening to Vogon poetry. So this is quote a poet, a line of poetry, or a lyric that you love. So this would we don't like poetry, and that might be strange for a booktuber to say that we don't like poetry, but poetry is just something we never really enjoyed. Really don't get it, right? We really don't get poetry, Olive. And despite some people's efforts, like our friend Pat tried to show me like dog poetry, whatever, try to get me into doing reading poetry, but it's just something we've never really been into. So I actually don't even know very much poetry. Just a couple. But despite that, there is a poem that is actually very important to me, and this is by. This is in the book Home by Whitney Hansen. So Whitney Hansen is, I'll try to put her picture there. Whitney Hansen is actually a very young poet, and I like reading her stuff because it's actually what I call more like just plain English poetry. And there is one poetry that I have read in the past that is very important to me because this is always this poem makes me think of our good friend Pax that we met on BookTube, that I've mentioned a bunch of times, that we only knew for a couple years, but that left a very, very big hole in my heart when she passed away. And this poem makes me think of her, and so it's short, I'll read it. I know now that this is how it works. You don't get to keep everyone in your life forever. There are some people that are just meant to be a sunrise for you, a light to pull you out of the darkness. There are friends, lovers, relationships that are seasonal, and no matter how deep a conversation you had with that person at 2 a.m., no matter how much you shared your heart, even if you can still draw the lines of their smile like the map of a too familiar road, in the back of your mind, there almost always comes a time to move on, a time to let go, and regardless of the letting go, I just wanted you to know you're always going to feel a little bit like home to me. No matter how temporary, it is still beautiful that I got to call so many hearts my home. So, like I said, it's really like plain English. It's really like not hard. It's hard to understand for a poetry simpleton like me. And a great message, right? That you just that there are people like Pax, right, in your life that they can be short-lived relationships, but can still be very impactful for you. So, okay. Next is, sorry, you need a pick me up, right? Okay. So 42. 42 was a very important number in in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And if you don't already know, I guess I'm not going to say why it is, but you find out. So the answer to life, the universe, and everything. What is the point? What is the meaning? Well, that's right in the prompt. It's 42 ends up being the answer to life. Um, so anyway, the prompt is, what is the point? What is the meaning of life? So I always remember, there's different things you remember throughout your life. And one that always stuck with me was back in the 80s. There was a show called Family Ties, a sitcom that starred Michael J. Fox as Alex P. Keaton. And it was about him and his family, and he was like a whiz kid, and his family kind of, he was so smart, his family kind of didn't really like get him, and he was very preppy and everything. But he had a sister, Mallory, played by Justine Bateman, who was not a whiz. But there is, there is a point then where he's reflecting, and he repeats a quote from Mallory that he realized turned out to be very wise, that she had said, the meaning of life is to be happy, try not to hurt other people, and hope you fall in love. And I always remembered that from back as a kid. I was a kid while watching that sitcom, but I always remembered that my whole life because I thought it was a pretty good summation of the meaning of life and what life should be about. And so I think that I've done a pretty good job of living that motto for the meaning of life. So, okay, it's radio beginning. Okay, and this problem comes from because the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I mentioned before, it was actually started as a radio program, shortly before that first book came out. So the prompt is, what is your favorite memory in your experiences as a listener to the radio? I don't really have a good answer to this. I mean, I don't know that I was ever much of a radio listener. But I do remember fondly as a kid listening on I guess it was every weekend, they would have Casey Kasem's, top 100. And I always remember like listening to that, waiting to, on the radio and to hear what the top song was for that week. So that's the best I got for that one. Prompt 5, the towel. And so in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, this was one of the funny things, was the towel. Towel turns out to be an essential item. This is something that Ford teaches Arthur, that you should always have a towel with you, like a shower towel, because there are so many things that it is useful for. Actually makes a pretty good case for it, like how many things you could use a towel for. So, after I read it, I was like, it wouldn't be bad actually to always have a towel with you, But anyway, so the prompt is the towel. What book or books would you pack for a holiday? So I just grabbed two here. When I go on a holiday, I usually want like easy reads, and so I just grabbed two books that are on my short TBR that I believe are easy feel-good books that I haven't read yet but plan to soon. So these are probably two that I would take on a vacation. That if I was going to go on a vacation in the near future, I had a lot of leisure time, these are probably two books that I would take. And that's Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I know a lot of people have read this, but I heard it's a good this ogre, who's like a battle ogre. She like hangs up her axe and starts this like cafe, and I think she has believe there's a sapphic romance, and it's supposed to be really feel good, cozy fantasy. And then the other one is the House on the Cerulean, the House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. So another one that I have, both of these books I should have read long ago. So many people have read these books, but I haven't. This is a book about it's a book about found family, supposedly real feel good, real easy reads. So those are the two books that I would take with me on vacation. Okay, the Infinite Improbability Drive. And so this one is because the ship that Zaphod stole, that's what it ran on. And that's how it traveled, was this Infinite Probability Drive, where it would appear like everywhere in the universe at like the same time. That's how it moved around. I don't know how it works. I mean, it's absurd science fiction, so it's not. Anyway, so the Infinite Probability Drive. Name a fast read. So this is the truth. I looked at the prompts in the description box while I was listening to while I was watching Gareth's video as he went through this tag. I first was listening to that and I read all the prompts. So before we got to this prompt, I already knew what my answer for this would be. It was like not even a question. And this, and Gareth said the same book when he got to it. I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. That's the thing that I was gonna say. So I just say it anyway. And I'm picking for the same reason he did, which is it is one of the most addictive books that I've ever read, and it's Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. So this book was awesome. This book is about a guy who's like a physics professor at like a local college, and he, kind of living like he's brilliant, but he's living a humdrum life. And then one day he gets kidnapped, and I don't want to. It's one of those ones that's I can't say too much about it, but he gets kidnapped, like temporarily, and then it ends up being like it's a multiverse thing, and so there's other places that he's traveling to, and so he's got his family here, and these places that he's going, and it was so addictive. I mean, it was an engaging story. It was high stress. It was like, this was one of those books. I don't say this often, but like I literally couldn't put it down. It was one of those books like you got to go eat lunch. And I read it over the weekend, in one weekend. And I don't usually read books in like 2 days like that, but I did for this one because like you go to eat lunch and you can't wait to get back to pick up the book. I literally had a hard time putting it down. I was just reading it the whole weekend. Really addictive book. Really, really addictive book. So that was super fast. One of the quickest times I've ever been through a full length book. Okay, number 7. Don't panic. That's kind of the. Is it on the cover? No. Well, you usually see this weird alien looking thing. You usually see it next to it with the words like "Don't panic" because that's like a saying in the book. Name a book with great levels of tension or suspense. So I did just name one, Dark Matter. That was a high tense book, but so as not to repeat, another one that I remember being a very quick read, also because it was very high tension, was this No Exit by Taylor Adams. So this is a thriller, and I don't read a ton of thrillers, but I'd heard good things about this one, read it, and did really enjoy it. I think I almost also finished this in one weekend, but it was pretty engaged. So this is about a college student. I think it was her mother was sick, and so she's out in the Midwest. She's trying to get home and to her sick mother, and there's a snowstorm. I think that's what it was, her sick mother. Anyway, there was this blizzard, so she has to take a detour into this rest stop on this highway of miles and miles and miles of nothing. And she has to stop because of this blizzard in this rest stop, and there's just a few other people there. That's like other people that had been stranded there. So there's like, I forget, there's like 6 of them maybe altogether. And she discovers when she's outside, I think she goes outside to try to make a phone call or something, and she discovers that one of the cars has a kidnapped child in it. So, now there's a lot of suspense, who's who, and maybe people aren't who you think they are. At one point, then you realize somebody's something, but maybe they're not who you thought they were, and so there's a lot of that going on, and there's some violence in it, and some real survival stuff going on. So it was good. It was a pretty good book. TV and film adaptations. This is the last prompt. TV and film adaptations, because this Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has been made into the TV show and also the movie. So, pick a book to discuss one or more TV or film adaptations that you know of the book. Pick good and bad if it's relevant to the book. So, what we picked was Foundation by Isaac Asimov. So if you don't know, this is this is just the first book of a trilogy. And after the trilogy, there have been other Foundation books. There's a prelude, then there was the subsequent trilogy. So, but the Foundation books, this is among the most famous science fiction books or series of all time. This series by Isaac Asimov. And for those not familiar with it, basically the basic premise is there's this guy, Harry Seldon, who is what's called a psychohistorian, and he predicts not specifics, but he can predict societal patterns over long periods of time, and based on this science of psychohistory. And when the book starts, where he's a citizen of this massive galactic empire with countless worlds that's all run by this empire that's based on the planet of Trantor. And Seldon realizes that the empire is going to fall, like in the near future. It's going to collapse, and that the galaxy is going to enter dark ages, but that if the right steps are taken, those dark ages can be they would normally take like 30,000 years, but if the right steps are taken, it can be limited to like 1,000 years. So anyway, he convinces the Empire, to let him go start this foundation on a faraway planet on the outer edges of the Empire's reach. This foundation, basically to act as like a galactic encyclopedia and start to collect and store all knowledge, for safekeeping, which is just a ruse, and it's really just Seldon's step one of a multi-year plan to prevent the Empire from, for rebuilding and preventing the Empire. And so he predicts all these different stages that society will have to go through, starting with that, the Empire is going to fall. But then, starting with this far little group of people on this little planet far away, that's the Foundation, they will rebuild things by going along with this sort of sequence of societal challenges that they have to go through. And so it's excellent. It's an excellent series. And it's now been made into a TV show on Apple Plus. So I think we just completed 3 seasons, right, Olive? 3 seasons? You need another pick-me-up? I think we just completed 3 seasons. It's the adaptation is really good. So the adaptation follows the very basic premise that I've just described, but it also makes some major changes. So like a central story arc in this thing is that the Emperor, is actually part of, this is not a spoiler, you find this out right in the beginning of the show. The Empire is actually run, that the Emperor is actually 3 different, they're clones of the same person. And Day, who's young, Dawn, who's young, Day, who's the middle one, that is like a middle-aged person that is actually the acting Emperor, and then Dusk, who's like the older mentor, you know what I mean? And they grow old and they die and they get replaced, they each move up and then get replaced by the next clone. And this has been going on for ages. This is totally not in the books, but it adds a really interesting major element to the story. There is a significant robot character in there that is not from they do pull some things from other Asimov stories. So Asimov has a lot of robot stories, so they pull some stuff from that. And there is this very, very important robot that they pulled from other Asimov material, that is a central character in the series, and it's a really, really amazing character. She's awesome. It's a really amazing character, amazing story that you develops as you go through the season. So we would highly recommend both this Foundation series. We don't reread. We reread very few things, and we were thinking we were probably going to reread this series, before too long, because it deserves a reread. Because it's been, I read this in I read it over 20 years ago, originally, probably 25 years ago, this original series. So it's due for a reread. And so 20 years ago, maybe. I don't know. Oh my God, he's so old. Anyway, so I would highly recommend both the books and the television show, even though they do have some significant differences. They're both awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so this says to tag some people, which I'll do, but I don't. Gareth tagged like everybody, so I think everybody's already been tagged. But I'll tag a couple of people that maybe weren't, that I think might be interested in doing this. I'm going to tag Crystal over at Fiber Artsy. I'm going to tag... Gareth probably already tagged Jack over at Sci-Fi Finds, but I will tag him in case he hasn't, because he would totally be into this one. And I'm going to tag Celeste over Cafe Cryptic, because I don't know if she's read this book, Celeste, but you could still do the tag, and I think maybe you would have a good time with this one. So I think Gareth tagged everybody else that I would tag. So that's it. Let us know if you have read or seen The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Yeah, I guess that's about it, right, Olive? You have anything else to say about Hitchhikers? No? This video went on a long time, I think. So, thanks so much for watching, guys. We're catching up with the video, so we got more coming. Book haul next, and then our Halloween reads that we've been doing. So, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment below. We always love to hear from you. If you don't have anything substantive to say, you can always leave Olive a puppy emoji, right? Because you do always like to see those. So. We'll see you again very soon. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.